and welcome back from lunch. So I'm going to coordinate this session, and the topic today is HR's role in managing stress and substance abuse in the workplace. My name is Obi, and I'm your moderator for today. In order to ensure that we have the full benefit, please put your phone on silent or vibrate mode. This session will run for 1 hour, 30 minutes. Then we'll have 15 minutes to ask questions. Please, as we go along, if you have questions to ask, write them down and the ushers will collect the questions from you. Today we're going to have 2 speakers. So first of all, it's my pleasure to introduce the first speaker in no particular order, Dr. Bukola Fagade. He's a consultant family physician and occupational health physician with passion for promoting health and wellness in the workplace as a tool for enhanced productivity. He's a fellow of the Faculty of Family Medicine of the National Postgraduate Medical College of Nigeria. He's a medical director for Chevron Nigeria Mid-Africa Business Unit. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Fagade. Our next speaker is Dr. Akagwu. He's an ardent advocate of preventive medicine and is passionate about workplace health and the well-being of individuals, especially in the resource-constrained context, which is characterized by rudimentary healthcare system. He's certified in the practice of occupational safety and health by the United Kingdom, NEBOSH. He works with Defense Health Maintenance Limited. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Cyril.
Welcome you to this session. It's not always a good time to have a session immediately after lunch. But we'll try and make it as interesting as we can so that people don't close off for us. So please, let's have an interactive house here. We're talking about HR's role in managing stress and substance abuse in the workplace. And it gives us great pleasure to be here as medical practitioners to share our experience with our colleagues in the HR space. In my company, we have a department which we call Human Resources and Medical Department. We are joined at the hips, we are joined at the heart and at the head. And that is to show you that in many organizations, there is a close proximity between what HR is doing and what medical is doing. So this afternoon, we want to work within that space of collaboration between HR and medical. And my colleague, Dr. Cyril Akagwu, will be talking to us, running us through some slides to give us some inside information and background information on this topic. And after him, I would talk a little bit more and bring it to a more practical level. And then we'll have some scenarios which we'll all discuss around. So please, let's keep sleep away and be attentive. Thank you.
All distinguished ladies and gentlemen here present. I've been introduced already, Dr. Cyril Akagwu. I think we'll try to make this as, like what has already been said, interactive. I know the alkaline flood for some of us that know what that means. Will be fighting us also since we just had lunch. So, but let's just try and pay attention as we run through the slides. Note your questions down so that we can get to talk about this thereafter. These are just a few slides just to introduce and set. Now we're talking about HR's role, human resources. The keyword, one of the keywords I want us to focus on is human. You're working with human beings. And human beings have some peculiarities. And those peculiarities are some of the things that we'll just gloss over quickly. We'll expect some of them as questions from you so that we can now go in depth. Now, because you're playing with human beings, some people say life is stress. You know, just looking at your life is stress, but there are different things that different people can cope with. So another keyword that we're looking at now is coping. Now, normal ways of coping, abnormal ways of coping. You know, and then some of the things that we'll be talking about now, those abnormal ways of coping. Shortcuts now coming in. We're now looking at some substances that people use to just try to get to live their lives and keep delivering, more or less. Now, this is just a brief outline of what we'll be talking about. You can just look at it quickly. Now, in the revision of terms, we need to talk about a few terms. Now, HR pivotal roles. I'm not a HR person, so I'm sure you know all about that. And now, the dynamic nature of the human system, which are the human beings that we'll be dealing with. Stress in the modern workplace, substance abuse or misuse, and its impact on individual and society. Now, stress and substance abuse, there's that connection, you know, like I said in my introduction. Now, performance management in the modern workplace, those are your duties. Now, however it is, you just have to perform. And to perform, you need to work with those human beings that you need to work with. For this presentation now, to revise, an introduction to human biology in this context. Now, the link between stress and substance abuse, there's a link, definitely. And then to lay the foundation for further deliberations on what we'll be talking about here. Now, stress. Tension. Anything that gives you tension. Now, all those words I put there. The important thing there is just the tension, bodily or mental. You know, that's why even when the WHO, in the classical definition of health, they talked about not just physical, but even the emotional and even the mental. So, but here we're looking at tension now. Anything that gives the human system tension is perceived as stress. But we should note here that one thing can give the same thing, the same scenario, the same circumstance may give somebody tension and may not give the other person tension. So these are all the things that I want to be resonating in our heads as we go along with the presentation. Substance abuse. Now, harmful or hazardous use of, when we talk about psychoactive substances, it's just something, because we know that for us, as for everything that we do, a lot of the things that the human body gets to do, it's the brain that modulates all of that. So a lot of these substances get to act in the brain and just coats your experience, more or less. It doesn't remove the experience, but it just, will I say, fine-tunes or modifies the way you perceive that situation. And that's why these substances are very important, and they come up here for us to talk about. Then I'll talk about addiction. Now, this is just a disruption in the normal way of behaving. It just disrupts it, and that we'll be talking about this as we go along. Now, HR teams. Well, as a layman, from my brief research, these are 6 headings. I'm sure as HR professionals, you may have other things that you'll be talking about here. Talking about recruitment, safety, employee relations, how people relate to one another and with the management, compensation and benefits, compliance, training and development. For all these things, you are referring to human beings. Human beings coming from homes. They may have passed through heavy traffic before they got to you in the office. Now they get to the office, it could be that two employees are keeping malice with one another. They fought last night before coming to the office. But the thing is, for you as a HR professional, your office has to deliver on the mandate, and there has to be profit. If I look at it in quantitative terms now, there has to be profits. And all these individuals and employees that you have, they have to be able to work together and deliver. So, let's talk about the human system now. This is just an analogy of the human DNA. Just like we're all seated here, how our faces are different. That is how we react to things also. The same thing, we react to them differently. And that cutoff point that we perceive as attaining the point of tension is also different for all of us, just like we are here. And that's why I put the structure of DNA here, for us to see that, yes, it is the DNA here that determines how we all turn out from our parents. And that's why most of the times, or all of the times, we don't look exactly like our parents. You know, we should put that at the back of our minds here now as we go along with the presentation. It also determines our uniqueness. You may react in one way to something, and the same thing coming the next day, because you slept very well in the night and you are refreshed. You may react to the same thing in a different way the very next day. Now, we're talking about tension now. Now, going back to our caveman days, this was an analogy that some people used. Now, stress to the human system releases hormones. Now, those hormones are just chemicals within the human body that primes the body to be able to respond to stress. Now, but this is mostly referring to physical stress now. For instance, a loud explosion outside, or you're in the bush somewhere and there's a wild animal coming at you. You know, quickly, several things happen. These are the hormones I'm talking about now. There's increased blood flow to skeletal muscles. These are skeletal muscles. That is if that same increased blood flow gets to the brain also. And the brain quickly analyzes the situation. Is this an animal that I can fight? Or is this an animal that I need to flee from? So, increased blood flow, the heart pumps fast, more blood to the brain. Everything happens within the twinkle of an eye. Now, if you decide to flee, that increased blood flow to the muscles will give your muscles more energy for you to run away. Now, this is the heart rate I talked about. Blood sugar increases, that is the energy for the system. Now, blood pressure also increases. I expect some questions from this particular example here, where we're talking about blood pressure. Now, the pupils dilate, especially in the night, for you to be able to see very well in the night, to be able to run, or to be able to know what is coming. Intestinal muscles relax, and then breathing rate increases. All of these are just supposed to prime the body, increase the energy store of the body to be able to fight or to flee. Now, I'm also talking about this human performance curve here now. Now, for every day of our lives, for us to perform our activities, knowing fully well that, well, there's a certain joke we joke in the office that if I can wake up in the morning and just sleep on my bed and I earn my daily salary for that day, I won't mind. You know, just let the alerts just be coming. You know, but even at that, there is the human performance. There's a curve that goes from, I'm not going to use the terms that are here, from boredom to being burnt out. If there's not much stimuli coming your way, you will get bored. And when you are bored, you cannot perform also. So you can imagine yourself in an office, not many people around, not much to do, or it's a boring, repetitive task that you need to do. People like that are prone to making mistakes also. So that's where you're talking about people that are not well stimulated in the office. At this performance level, you can see it's still quite low. People need optimal levels of stimuli, and for a task that is not so difficult, and that keeps them well tuned, for them to be able to perform optimally at this point here. But of course, we know that this differs for different people. Let's also make reference to these first two slides that I talked about. Then of course, as you go down to the point where the task gets difficult, you know that that person is going to be in distress because you won't be able to perform. So, and that's why as HR professionals, we should have this curve somewhere at the back of our minds when we are dealing with employees, especially, I'm sure there will be some line managers here somewhere, but these are all the things that pertain to stress in the workplace, as we'll see in the next slide. Now, stress in the modern workplace. This is a very busy slide. So this is how I want you to imagine the mind of somebody that is under stress in the workplace. So many things running through the person's head. Both things in the office, challenges to be met in the office, and challenges to be met back home. Of course, if you're not performing in the office, it means no pay. And once there is no pay, it means a husband or wife and children are going to be angry at home. Things like that. So that is what happens. So you look at this and just look at the myriad, so many things here. Then look at this slide also. Look at this young man here, tied up. Poor leadership, bullying in the office. Well, mortgage, not very widespread here. But out in developed countries, it's something very serious to think about. Deadlines, bills, all of that. These are the things that people think about because they will have something there 9 to 5. Not just the 9 to 5 we deal with anymore. The terrain is changing now. You know, the work pushes you even outside the office. Now, looking at this vicious cycle from stress. Now, what constitutes stress is different for everybody. The human system reacts to it the same way. The same way. Now, you expect that the physical health will decline. We expect questions from this. Psychological strain, there's a reduced and decrease of motivation. Now, the young man could be in the office but is absent-minded, or it will generate some excuses for you not to be in the office. But even with all of this, it's the company that suffers, and even the individual suffers also. And as a follow-on to this, low financial returns, decreased productivity, low job satisfaction, less money coming in, leading to more stress, and the vicious cycle continues and continues until that individual looks for a way to break that cycle. Either it's a legitimate way or a way that is not a very nice one that will be of no help to the person. Now, this is just looking at the shortcuts or the ways of trying to break that vicious cycle. This vicious cycle that is here. There are ways to break it that will be okay. They may not be fast, but these are ways that the individual will benefit from. But now the shortcuts, of course we know that shortcuts mostly cause problems. Now those shortcuts, we're looking at the human system under tension. Now ways of breaking that tension, they could resort to alcohol. Because alcohol is a brain depressant. It just tells your brain, don't worry, the thing that is in front of you is not as big as it looks. Just relax. But of course, the alcohol, once it clears on the system, the problem is still there. But at that point in time, well, she's still in the office. Apologies for all my pictures are not from our part of the country, but they still send the same message. Now, even after drinking the alcohol and sleeping on her desk and all of that, these files and things, workload on her table will not move from there. She has to deal with it. This young man also, these tablets that are here, it could be anything. Cocaine, ecstasy, MDMA, amphetamines, they make them into very nice tablets. At times they make them into nice shapes for them to drink. You know, and of course people like this are people that can afford them. They take these drugs and it just deceives the brain and tells the brain all is well. All is well. The workload comes again, he takes the drugs, tries to perform the task as much as he can, and in doing this, errors are made. But of course, even after all of this, the problem is still there in front of him and he has to perform. And HR, as HR professionals, performance, which is what my colleagues here will be talking about. So now, I expect that we've all gone through all of this. I've just been talking, but all what I've been saying actually reflects all the things here within the slides. Now, looking at the second point here, we should know that all these things are drugs. Even alcohol that people take, it's a drug also, more or less. Now, these drugs, when they get into the body, they have to be dealt with. And in being dealt with, they have effects on the body also. So I expect that we're going to take each of these during the question and answer session. Alcohol, I don't want to put caffeine in there because I'm sure some people will crucify me, but it's also a drug. Before we now go to cocaine, heroin, those big boys that we all know about. Let's say, this person is a drug addict. But really, the bottom line is that the person is trying to shield him or herself from the tension and is trying to do it the wrong way. So now, I think I've virtually talked about this slide already. It's because the stress is there, the tension is there, and this individual is actually trying to, will I say, blind the brain from the problem. And that's why the result of taking these drugs. You know? Now, and of course, these are drugs. Either you take it by injection, they take it as tablets first, it doesn't work so much. And of course, these drugs, as you keep taking them, there's something we call habituation. You take it the first time, one tablet. It gives you that effect that you want. The next time the stress comes again, you take one tablet. the effect lasts for an hour, but it's not quite right. You now take 2 tablets the next time. After some time again, the 2 tablets is really not so good anymore, and then you jump to 4 tablets. And not knowing that yes, they are drugs, and there's something called overdose also. Then at some point, you take tablets, it doesn't work so fast. You now ask your friend that has sold it to you, you now say, there's another one that can be given as injection, that one works very fast. And that's why you see so many other of these drugs taken as injectables also. That one kicks in quickly, and they get the effect that they want. But of course, they should know that with these drugs, as they jump into the system quickly, they can easily overwhelm the liver and other systems within the body and cause problems. Now, there are some other case scenarios that will be taken eventually during the discussion session that will further highlight this point also, and your role as HR professionals. Now, HR teams and performance management. The bottom line of all what we're talking about here is you're dealing with human beings. And as the HR department or the boss within the HR department, your duty is to ensure that this very vital resource of your organization, the humans, we can remember the curve I talked about, they are at that peak. Irrespective of what is happening in the office, bullying and all whatnot, or in their homes, you expect that they are operating at their peak. So that even when they go for training sessions, that impact will be there. Whatever you're telling them, they'll be able to deliver in the office. So these are just a few points here. Dr. Fagade will really talk and expatiate more on this. Thank you very much.
Like I said earlier, we want to try and make this as interactive as possible. He's taking us through some theories behind stress, substance abuse, how the human body reacts to some of these things. But let's look at this slide as HR professionals. How can we help? Now, a man who's just had a bad quarrel with his wife at home will come to work. He's not bringing his wife to work, but he's bringing that quarrel to work. A man who's just had a bad exchange with a neighbor or with the commercial bus driver will walk into the office. You are not seeing the commercial bus driver, you are not seeing the neighbor, but the scar and the effect of that encounter it brings to work. So as HR professionals, don't just look at people for who they are. Realize that they are carrying baggages. And like Cyril said, when these baggages build up over time, people look for a way of escape. Therefore, it is important that every workplace must implement a drug-free workplace. You must focus on the drug. There's no running away from it. It is no more a thing of stigma to say that in my workplace we have a drug policy, a drug prevention policy. Every reasonable and every responsible employer must institute one. And you have not started until you have a written policy. That written policy must be well crafted, must be well known to everybody in the organization. Every one of your employees must know that there's a policy. It's not written and the HR manager files it away. It has to be known to everybody. It must be made known. And if you are in a unionized environment, your represented employees and their representatives must have an idea of this policy existing. Now, this policy, gone are the days when drug prevention policies are punitive. They are not. You don't make them to say once you have it, then you are kicked out of the door. You should make it in a way that you help people to rediscover their life. You see, taking to drug is an abnormal reaction to an abnormal situation by a normal person. It shouldn't be taken as if the man has gone bonkers. It's a normal human being faced with an abnormal situation and has decided to resort to an abnormal solution by resorting to drugs. So you must help that person to come back to normalcy. And your drug policy must focus on that. So rehabilitation must be the first course of answer to the drug situation in your workplace, not termination of employment. Termination of employment will come when the same person begins to go through rehabilitation more than once or twice. Then you can make a recourse to termination. It becomes an incorrigible case. So HR practitioners have a big role to play in formulating a drug policy for their workplace. Some of us work in organizations where we have a medical setup that is fairly robust, but I know that some other workplaces don't even have a single nurse in the establishment. But that is not enough reason not to have a drug. You can get people outside, vendors, who would help you to, put this together. But it is important that everybody, particularly if your business can be described as a safety-sensitive business, you must have a drug policy in place. Now, EAP services. How many of us are familiar with EAP services? EAP is Employee Assistance Programs. EAP services are also part of a good drug and alcohol. But I'm aware that EAP business is just fairly new in Nigeria, and it's becoming popular by the day. So we must learn to use EAP services to help employees, particularly those who have stress issues. And then, please, that last point must be noted. People tend to stigmatize those who use drugs, those who are alcoholic. It's our duty to help employees to stop stigmatizing such situations. It doesn't help, because when people are stigmatized, they go under, they hide it. They don't come forth easily anymore. So in your workplace, you must remove that stigma and respect the privacy of people. It's important that we do that if we want to make a headway in substance abuse prevention in the workplace. Tomorrow, at one session, I'll be talking more about work-life balance, about wellness promotion in the workplace, and we'll talk a little bit more about some of these issues and how we can help as HR practitioners. This is supposed to be a concluding class, so I'll just leave it there. But let's look at two scenarios. I'm going to give you two scenarios. Don't worry whether they are real or not, but it's not important. The first one, a middle-level employee, somebody who is just not yet a supervisor, almost a supervisor, maybe a lead person in a team. Employed, and for first 5 years in employment, was considered a good employee, very good. And the ranking was always in the upper quartile. And but somewhere along the line, a transformation took place. He got married. 5 years in employment, he has made enough money, he became marriage eligible. So he got married. And 2 years into his marriage, his performance began to dwindle. And by the third year, fourth year, his performance ranking, began to drop. And then his rate of absenteeism also increased. For no reason, he would just not show up. And usually these following weekends, you won't see him on Monday morning. He shows up on Tuesday morning with all sorts of stories. His grandfather had died like 2 or 3 times. And then you begin to wonder, as the HR person in that organization, so the question is, what would you do as the HR manager or HR supervisor or whoever you are in charge of the HR business of that organization? You are presented with this. Now the second case is the director of your company, big man in the company, and for years that you have been working in the company, you've known him to be a very pleasant human being, very lovely person to work with. But somewhere along the line, you notice that suddenly he became a very easily irritable human being, very impatient with people, shouting and banging the table. And sometimes when he has done it, he would phone you later and say, "Oh, I'm sorry the way I spoke to you. I didn't mean to do that, but this thing is getting into me." And you know that the business is going through a very difficult time. Shareholders are crying about return on investment. The parent company in Europe is constantly sending people to come and look at the books here because they are not seeing what they expect to see. And this director is bearing the brunt of all this. And then you notice that he began to lock his door. And by the time the door opens, there is a lot of smell of all sorts of things in the office. And his space is not as bouncy as they were earlier in the day. So he's been locking his door and trying his hand on a number of things. Alcohol and possibly some hard substances. He's a director, so he can afford anything. And now you are the HR person. He's senior to you in the organization. When you are the HR person, what will you do? So those two scenarios. Who wants to bury the cat, as they say? And tell us which of the scenarios you want to tackle, the first one or the second one.
As an HR practitioner, noticing his past and seeing his present, I think the best thing to do is to go to his house, make investigation within the neighbors. What is happening to this person? If you are able to get a clue, then I can then call him personally, interact with him, advise him on the state of things, that things have to be taken gradually. No matter how you are in life, you will have one problem or the other. Because if you don't get it early in your year, you will get it at other age. No matter, there's no way you will get one problem or the other. So thank you.
Thank you. To his own opinion. So thank you very much for that wonderful opinion.
If I were in the HR, well, I'm HR, what I would do perhaps would be to refer such a person to the occupational physician if there's such a person in the system. Because it may not be something that I'll be able to handle. But perhaps first, HR could discuss that, senior management, among senior management. And if it's not something we think we can handle, we can refer that to the occupational physician. Such a person most likely will open up to the physician than to colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you.
No longer doing well. I will invite him to the office. Happily, jovially, don't give him any clue that you know what he's doing, so that he can have confidence in you and really say, "Oh, Bayo, what's going on? Look at your appraisal last year. This is what it is this year. What's the problem? What's the down here?" Or even before then, you quickly ask him, "Oh, how is your wife? How is family? How are your kids if he has?" From how he reacts, you know that there is an issue. Then you keep that one aside, and before you now go to the appraisal side. Depending on what he will say, but I think you look at it empathically to get him to be able to talk to you, so that you can be able to, and win his confidence, so that you can now be able to know how to advise him.
Look at this scenario. The few answers we have gotten give me an impression that the HR practitioner in charge of the workplace is actually not guilty of anything. Suppose you are the cause of the man's problem, then what's the way out?
We are the listening ears for people. We must show empathy. People should be comfortable to walk up to us and discuss even their life issues. Remember that this man got married, and soon after his marriage, his problems started. He was actually having a very turbulent marriage, and he couldn't handle it, and it affected his performance. But he will only confide in you if, as the HR practitioner, you provide a platform for them to come forward and discuss with. So I think we need to understand that bit of our role as HR practitioners. Now people will only, but if they see you as the one who is going to tell management about that secret of theirs, then they won't come forward, they will solve their problems elsewhere. to the detriment of their health and other things. So a lot of expectations for us there. So let's leave that one and let's talk about the second scenario, the director.
Thank you very much. The 3 R's of becoming a very, very successful HR practitioner. You must understand that at the end of the day, everyone is talking about results. You must look for ways and means of ensuring that you achieve results. The second one, effective utilization of resources. Second one, the third one is relationship. Out of these 3, I want us to focus a lot of attention on relationship. That is R, the third R. So whether this director that we are talking about is our boss or not, let's assume he's our boss. It now means that we should understand how to relate with our bosses. There's nothing stopping us from walking up to the boss to say that, sir, or man, this guy is a sir. I have noticed X, Y, Z happening in the last 2 weeks and for the last 1 month. And from the reports, we have discovered, the person is not really talking about himself, we have discovered that your profile is becoming low. In our organization, we use what we call the RAG status. You see, the RAG status is not talking about percentages really. It's only saying that you used to be on green before. Now you are amber or red. So we'll be responsible, but we are all interested in the fact that you need to still continue to achieve or set targets and results for this department. And whatever we can possibly do, we still want to do it. I'm talking of relationship, number 1. It's important to act as a good psychologist too. As an HR person, it doesn't mean you should not understand personality issues. You must try as much as possible. We must try to go in. That's why we talk of empathy all the time. So you will still do that on one hand, act as a psychologist to find out why this rating is still going down. But not just looking at it, you must also be armed with possible solutions. And you fling one, fly one before your boss. Sir, could it be that there is a challenge at home, or with your children, or with the extended family, depending on the kind of relationship you have built with that boss. And it's important for you to find a way around building positive interpersonal relations with your boss. That's on one hand. Second hand is you must look out for who his friend is. Another director that can talk to him. And that's also very, I'm talking from experience now. Look for a director who is friendly with, or some of his colleagues. They may not be directors, but he relates well with them. So tell them, okay, has been behaving like this in the last 4 weeks or 3 weeks, and it's affecting the rating of the department. And the solutions we have include X, Y, Z. You must fling 1 or 2 solutions. And before you know what is happening, the therapy has started. And you continue until you get to the end of the matter. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Will you introduce yourself, sir?
My name is Ajose Harrison. I'm the Director of Planning, PSS Lagos.
Thank you very much. To the top, to those below, to those at our level. The HR person must be a go-to person. In any situation, people should find you as somebody they can go to and discuss with. That's one. He said something about involving another director or somebody. That sounds very good. But we also have to tread carefully there so that you don't breach people's confidentiality. You want to talk to him and say, maybe you won't mind me inviting me so that we can sit down together and talk about this. And if he gives you the go ahead, you can do that. So you must be very careful so that you don't go tell somebody and then that person tells somebody and before you know it, it's stress.
I haven't said that amount. Okay, I'm at Satiye from Nigeria Railway Corporation, Lagos. We can handle it from another way. And people can see that way as being we can handle it through a case study. Because at times, if you go to meet the man, the first thing that comes to his mind is that you are spying on him. if you believe that you are spying on him and you are infringing on his privacy. But you can go for it in another way. Maybe you just go to him, you can make up a write-up. You can build a write-up on your own. And if it's somebody you normally talk to, that I have a staff, what you notice about that man, you will not explain to him. I have a staff that for some time now, I started behaving this way. And this is a case I have in my answer. And I just want to have your advice on how to handle this. And you know, the man will not, I'm equally doing this. He will not ask you, as an HR person, how do you think you can handle this? From that, you start that discussion. Because some organs are so erratic. The more he said that, they will not, this guy is spying on me. But if you come as a case study, ask him for his own view about that case. He will not throw it back to you and say, what do you think you can do as an HR person? Why are you asking me?
So at some point, your case study will still have to be, the ripple has to be broken.
Yes.
Keystone. The first thing one we need to consider is the timing of whatever discussion you might want to have with the boss. That boss may have high and low moments. So, at the low moments, when it's likely to be receptive to discussion, likely to be welcoming, that's when you can talk to him. 2, the information you can gather from his immediate environment, the people that work with him, so when you go there, his boss around, no, this or that, you can get some information from them. So you have an idea of what is going on. So you look at the timing, you gather information from the environment, so that you are able to have discussion with him. Maybe it's from normal official discussion, at the moment it's receptive, I can open up with him. Then you are likely to get the results you might desire.
Thank you very much. So he has spoken about.
If I have a case like that in my hand, I'm sorry, I am Iledari, the advocate from the electricity distribution company. My boss is somebody that you can just, if you want to see him, knock on the door and you go in. But because this is a peculiar case, I might just ask the secretary to get an appointment that I want to see him, instead of just going the normal way. And I'm sure by the time they receive this type of thing coming from the secretary, you begin to wonder, is it that they have noticed my behavior or whatever? And when I go in, I will first of all start by apologizing. Okay, I'm sorry. I've not come to, don't think I've come to conclusion to whatever is happening, but I'm only concerned about what I've noticed. You haven't been like this. I will not ask him to tell me what is happening, but I will just let him know that I've noticed it. And I want to appeal to him that whatever it is, please take it easy. And I want to believe that before, I might be lucky enough, before you may just open up to me because of the way I started you. Please, I'm sorry, I'm not prognosing. Whatever is the problem, I want to just appeal to you. Consider your health, your family, whatever it is, take it easy. I'm thinking that he may open up to me, and from there we take it up. Thank you.
So let me ask you a question before you drop that. You have spoken to him. He has welcomed you and then.
No, I will have sent the secretary to book an appointment.
Yes, you have booked an appointment.
Okay.
And you got into the office.
Yes.
Well, you don't normally book an appointment to see me.
Yes.
You book an appointment. You kind of raised his ante
Yes.
and then you break it to him.
Yes.
What are the solutions you are going to put on the table?
After telling me what the problems are.
Yes, after telling you what the problem is. For instance, I'll tell you the problem is, look, on the home front there is Wahala.
Yes.
Your friend, my wife, is giving me problem. That one I'll put aside. The people in Europe are after me. They say our books are not looking good. They say we are not running the business well. They don't understand Nigeria. They don't understand anything that's happening here. Government.
I will let you know that for you to move forward, you must be in the right frame of mind.
Okay.
So I let you know that the way he's going about it will definitely affect his health. And when he gets to that position that he can no longer continue, it will be worse than where we are. So I let him know what it is and advise maybe to seek medical attention.
So
And
you
then,
will refer him to a specialist
sure, sir.
to handle the case,
Yes.
and you will make sure that you get his confidence and treat this. Even the secretary must not know about this.
Why I've gone into
It's between the two of you alone,
Yes.
and keep it so.
Yes.
If you are referring him, that referral must be done discreetly, and it must be done not next door to the office, a bit far from the office. You have different examples that you want to share with us concerning the subject of stress and substance abuse. But let me ask a question quickly through the room. What are the causes of stress that people know in this environment? Maybe peculiar to your business, maybe peculiar to the environment in which you work. Let me start from that angle.
I wake up anytime from 3 a.m. so that I can get to the office on time. And if someone doesn't have adequate sleep, it's enough reason to cause stress.
Okay, thank you. Talking about traffic in Lagos, we did an experiment, or is it an experiment or a study some 2 years back. We went to some motor parks in Lagos. How many things that drivers drink? And we analyzed the monkey tail. Monkey tail had cannabis, Indian hemp, had cocaine, had opiates, had amphetamines, they had like 8 different substances of abuse all packed into it. And that's what the driver who drives the yellow buses in Lagos will first drown 1 or 2 before he jumps on the steering. Is that bad? Well, you see, that job is one of the most stressful jobs a human being can do. You have to start at 4:30 in the morning. You leave your house 3:30 or 4. And they are working till 11:30 at night, and they do it like 7 days in the week. Around the clock. The only way they can keep doing it is to keep shacking monkey tail. And you can imagine the impact of that. This is somebody who is supposed to be alert, who is supposed to be driving with full concentration, and whose reflexes are supposed to be sharp. Yet he's drowning monkey tail at every turn. We should expect now we are not even having the number of, more than what we have in terms of accidents is just the grace of God. What happens in motor parks is a very good example. And that's the way they beat traffic, but those who don't try that too. Okay, traffic is one. Let's say another suggestion, causes of stress. And
yes. My name is Anna Madi. I think that one of the causes of stress is fear of failure, especially when people are not prepared. And if it continues, it's going to lead to serious issues.
Fear of failure. So are you saying it is okay to fail?
Well, failure is not the end of it. Somebody who fails and realizes that, yes, I have failed once, I can try again and again, and I'll succeed.
Yes.
So it really depends on how the person handles it, but most times people are stressed when they have that fear of failure. And if they have not realized that failure is not the end of it. Thank you.
One philosopher said that when you fail, you have not failed. You only learned how not to do it. One of the ways not to do it. So when you're doing any task, I agree completely with you. Fear of failure puts pressure on people. You can't lie.
Live above your income.
Okay, living above one's income. How many of us have had employees with negative payroll here? Yeah, because they have borrowed from credit union, they have borrowed from banks, they have borrowed from everything, they've taken all the takeable loans and come, and at the end of the day, they are negative payroll. They have to pay something back, but because they can't pay back, so the finance will put it at 0 at the end of the day. And you have it, it's a cause of stress. I work closely with HR group, it happens. It's not, it's a cause of stress. And it's because we all try to live up to the Joneses. What the next man is doing, we want to do it. My colleagues are already buying land in Matondo, I must go and buy land in Matondo. That kind of, even if your circumstance does not permit it, you put your neck into it. There's trouble. And the latest craze is my family must go abroad. And I'm here, and all that. And each time the pound or the dollar slumps, your heart slumps. So, thank you very much for that, sir. Trying to not living within one's means. Yes, sir.
Another one that can come. We have some leaders that believes in tribal sentiments. They only work from their side. They believe they are safe working principle and they overwork that people. The people they overwork, they have stress. And the people that are not doing anything, we have problem. They will call it beyond that stress and try to work. So leadership style is one of the key stress factor.
Thank you. Leadership style is a stress-inducing factor. Now, we put up all this. I will ask my colleague to help us moderate this. As HR practitioners, what can we do about these stressors?
10, 15 minutes. I think we'll be discussing a lot of what we need to take out of here. You know, now we have the foundation of why we're here, a little extra. So now, solutions. Okay, you first, okay?
One of the things in the area of commuting, long hours of commuting, traffic, one of the things that I think the government can do, or organizations can do, is introduce flexible work hours. You know, maybe somebody starts to work at 7, closes at 4, and another person who lives far away can resume at 8 or 10 and close at 5, depending on what the HR department can work out this timetable, this resumption and closing time. Thank you.
Now, when we talk about flexible work hours, I know that it has to do with performance, accounting for your staff, ensuring that they're doing what they need to do and all of that. I still think that there's a department within the organization that has to put this across to management to let them know, to justify in a way. So, do you have any way that you could suggest to your colleagues here on how to get to push this agenda forward to management so that they can take something back? More so for those in Lagos, wherever.
Starting with Lagos government.
Wherever, just so that we are discussing here. Okay?
With the government, yes, you get the stakeholders, at least you get people to come together and then brainstorm on how this can work, and then you now put up a paper, a position paper, and then you introduce it to the head of your MDA, and then from there, you know, they take it to the level at which policies.
Opening this phase of discussion. Now, how many organizations here? I believe we represent several different organizations here. How many organizations represented here actually operate flexi hours? Anybody? Okay, Sam, can you, okay, maybe we'll take the comments from both of you. How did you arrive at this? Possibly maybe it started before you joined the organization. How did you arrive at this, and how do you ensure that actually performance is maintained?
Okay, my name is Mike. Flexi, it goes beyond the flexible working hours. You have job sharing, working from home, and that. But I think the best way to introduce it is to focus on the benefits to the organization. Because there are cultural issues around flexi, especially working from Nigeria. It works better in Europe, America, and all those places. But in Nigeria, there are some cultural issues because we still want to look people face to face, when we are dating. We want to, somebody sends you an email, it comes to you, it calls you. That's our culture. So you just have to be careful how you introduce it. But it is working very well in Nigeria, at least in my own organization.
What organization is that?
I work for Shell.
Shell. stress. You know, and one of the sources there, we talked about traffic, and then how to get around that. You know, that was how we started. So I think we should, as HR professionals, we should try to look at the foundations of these issues, and then trying to look at solutions that, of course, looking at your own job description as a HR professional, you need to ensure that everybody's at their peak and everything is working and going. But for looking at these individuals now, knowing fully well that they're human beings, working in normal situations, and trying to get around it in a normal way. Now, coming from different organizations here, because what works in one organization will not work in another organization. You know, but the important thing is for us to know where we are coming from and where we're going, with knowing fully well that our deliverables vary from organization to organization. You know, so let's try and focus on that. So can we get another source of stress?
I'm talking about living above your means, and not speaking. Like in my case, we have financial embarrassment policy. It can lead you out of the system. If you get people writing in that you borrowed and you're not paying, we give you opportunity to pay. Whereby you do not pay, you get the boot because you're bringing the integrity of the organization down. There is staff working here, you're owing. It puts your integrity in question. Then another thing that goes on is, in our place, assuming you want to borrow, you don't borrow, if you have a threshold, maybe your salary is 100,000, you can borrow 50,000, but you can't borrow less than 50,000 because we're having what you were saying, having zero in your take-home pay. So we now said no, it can't happen because a lot of people are getting into trouble, you know, handling their bills. So you can't borrow more than 50% of your salary. Whatever you're doing, you cannot. We won't give you. Then even the banks do it. So I don't know whether the banks now, I don't know whether you can go and borrow. They will look at you, especially if you're a salary earner. They don't. So they don't equally give you if it's less than half your salary. So if you want to borrow, you borrow what you can, you know. Okay. Well, the one I know is that they don't. They will always ask, you know, how much you bring your pay, and they don't. So I don't know.
Thank you. My comment on the traffic situation is that one way to ease it is people that stay afar should leave their homes very early enough. Wait, just listen to me. Just hear me out. Leave their homes early enough. They spend more time on the road. When they get to the office early, they have 1 or 2 hours of sleep before they start the day. Because the truth is that you have to resume at work at 8 a.m. If you leave your house later, you go into more traffic, you are stressed up before you get to the office. So you can leave early enough, catch some sleep, get refreshed. Also, as part of handling that, we have vacations. Okay, staff are supposed to take time off work so that they can refresh themselves to cope with all the stress they've had. And of course, another option is to look at staff bosses so that while commuting, they can rest.
Okay, I'll take that as
Leaving home early.
Yeah.
For some officers can be very dangerous. Just last week, an officer of ours was attacked, and she just gave them 3 men on Okada attacked her, and she just gave them her back. You know, there are some places that people live in that they can't afford to leave home before the light breaks, the day breaks. So that's why we're saying, look, if this kind of person can resume at 10 and close at 5, then this person has the opportunity to leave home maybe at 7 to get to work for 10. That's all we're saying.
I'm Rebecca. I love the immigration service because sometimes people call us customs, prisons, whichever when you are needed for immigration. I think the problem we have that is the government or the organizations we work for, especially most of you that are coming from the private sector. I have a feeling that we don't have a good human oriented governance, whether it's organizational or as government body, as a nation, because we need to care for those who we have employed in terms of providing them for accommodation close to, that is very much convenient in proximity to their workplace. But we don't know that, like people who are coming from Lagos, you live at Ikorodu and you are working in Ikoyi, because it's cheaper for you to stay in Ikorodu or any other outskirt. In fact, some are even very close to Ibadan. So many Ibadan even, and they come to work in Lagos. And you know, there are Shagamu, many are Shagamu. So you face a lot of hazards on the way, and then you have to come to work late. And the organization only wants you to be there on time. They are only concerned about your coming to work on time and performing. But they don't care how you come and how safe you come, and they don't even bother whether it's stressful or not. I think the organizations, whether private or public, should go into the aspect of housing policy for their workers.
Thank you very much. That's what we have been talking about. I know some are taking notes, but let me just try and encapsulate everything that we have been talking about. We have looked at stress as a necessary part of life. From Dr. Cyril's presentation, all of us need some form of stress to stay normal. As long as we're able to contain the stress and cope, that coping word is important. People break down when they cannot cope anymore. Now, in coping with stress, people try to find all sorts of outlets, and that brought us to the question of substance abuse. People take to alcohol, they take to hard drugs, they take to soft drugs. Even the party drugs. Those who have teenagers here, believe me, parties these days by teenagers and young adults are being smeared by party drugs, hallucinogens, stimulants, tablets, powders, they put in drink, they mix the drink, they're all high and happy. Be careful if you have young people. I mean, those drugs are 2 for a penny, they're all over the place. And so we must be careful. And then employees, workers are also having access to those drugs because they want to escape the stress. We have looked at the things that put people under stress. They want to get results. They want to outdo others. They want the fear failure. They have targets to meet. You're working in a bank. You have a target of 20 million to bring in this month when your job is on the line. It's a source of stress. You have to deliver a particular memo that has to be a lot of things happen in various organizations that put people under stress. I've also learned this afternoon that even we as HR practitioners can be sources of stress to people. So we have to be careful of the HR practitioners too. So there are so many things that put people under stress. And people put themselves under stress because they cannot contain themselves within the means of their livelihood. They go beyond what they can afford. They start chasing after things because others are chasing after it. They get all sorts of loans. They get higher purchase for a Jeep because they want to ride a Jeep like any other person. They get so many things. So those are some of the stresses we have spoken about. We have looked at 2 scenarios that are likely to happen, or that could actually happen. In fact, one of them actually happened, the other one was almost like happening. And we have discussed amongst ourselves what we would do as HR practitioners if we were confronted with such situations. There was a suggestion which said we need to go to the house and go and find out. I think that's not a very good thing to do because you might run into trouble that way. And then we had so many suggestions, including the spiritual angle to it. And so HR practitioners must learn to go and up their spiritual antenna, so that because they don't know when they will need it as well. But we have, in those 2 scenarios, come out with the strong fact that as HR practitioners, we must be go-to people. You can't lock up yourself in your office and not reach out to people. You must reach out to those on the floor. And when I say the floor, I don't mean the factory floor. If you are working in the factory, people people in the factory must see you as HR. HR is not just to recruit and then sack. The day is there to while they are in service, you're supposed to be an enhancer of their career. So they must see you as that. And then we spoke about drug policy. Every workplace must have a written drug policy that must be made known to everybody. And I've told you some of the components of that drug policy. It must be written in such a way that it's not punitive. It's supposed to be a correctional instrument. And there should be opportunities in it for remediation. If you don't have an in-house system, you're free to hire somebody to write one for you that is peculiar to your place. So I think we've had a very good afternoon here today. I want to thank Dr. Cyril for giving us the benefit of his experience. And I want to thank Obi for being our able moderator. Even though she has kind of stayed out of the fray, I'll hand over to her to close us out. Thank you.
Dr. Fagade and Dr. Cyril for this wonderful presentation and the interactive session. Before we end, please, we just have a little token from the Institute. And a fellow of the Institute, Mrs. Olajumoke Akikoye, will do the presentation.
Distinguished panelists, and my dear brothers and sisters of the human resource profession. It's been a wonderful time with these two gentlemen who have not only teased us with the knowledge they brought to us, but also almost teased us out of our own brain and our wits. I'm going away with a lot of new things, lessons learned, new terminologies. I'm not going to forget Harrison and the bind it up therapy. The financial embarrassment policy. I think that's a good one for a time like this. But more importantly, that as human resource managers, we need to be agents of sympathy and agents of change. We do not need to complicate the lives of our staff. On behalf of the President, Council, and entire members of the Chartered Institute of Personnel Management of Nigeria, I'd like to present this to Dr. Akagwu Cyril Ojojide. As everybody is running away from your study, they kept saying Dr. Cyril. I know that you have that company. Thank you very much for the effort you put in and for the knowledge you have imparted into us. Thank you. And of course, Dr. Fagade. My sister also was running away from that. Fagade is a very simple name. Yes. We thank you very much for making this session very simple and interesting. God bless you. And to all of us, let's all enjoy the evening. We need to be back in the hall early enough for the gala night. It promises to be interesting.